There were 4 ways out of this, and Adaeze Nwosu used every one of them before she understood that there had never been any. The first was to hand the film back and forget it. The second was to sell it. The third was to say nothing to anybody. The fourth was to walk into a police station. She tried them in that order. It took 9 days, but on the morning it started, none of that had happened yet. She was doing what she had done every working morning for 30 years. Standing in a basement under Chungamuro, with her hands in a tank of developer. There are 11 steps down to that shop. A red bulb over the door. A hand-painted sign, nobody has repainted since 2009. Adaeze is 52 years old, and she develops film by hand. A trade people have been calling dead for 11 years. They are not wrong. Almost nobody comes down those stairs. Old men with a camera from their father. Art students. Once a year, somebody who found a roll in a drawer after a funeral. Here is the thing about her trade that nobody thinks about. When you shoot digital, you take 400 pictures and you scroll. Your eye moves at the speed of a thumb. Nobody has looked at a single frame properly since about 2008. When you develop film, you look at every frame, one at a time, with a loupe, because each one cost money and none of them can be undone. Adaeze has looked at more individual photographs, properly, slowly, than almost any living person in that city. That is not a talent. That is what is left when a trade dies, and you stay in it anyway. On a Tuesday in March, a man she had never seen before came down the 11 steps and put 4 rolls of film on the counter. He paid in advance, in cash. He wrote a phone number in the ledger. He said he would come back Friday. He did not come back Friday. He did not come back at all. And when Adaeze rang the number in the ledger, a recorded voice told her it had never been in service. By then, she had developed all 4 rolls, printed the contact sheets, and gone over them with a loupe. And she had already made a small note in her ledger about frame 11. 2 questions sit under all of it. What does a woman do when she is the only person alive who has properly looked at a photograph that 4 other people will break into a building for? And what happens when the man at the top of her stairs turns out to be the one person who needs her to have seen it? Stay. It starts with a tank of developer and a Tuesday. The morning it started, Min-ho ruined a batch. He had been with her 14 months. He was 20 years old. He wore an enormous hoodie under his apron. And he was the only person under 40 in that city who had ever asked to learn this. Temperature, Adaeze said, without turning around. It is fine. It is 22. Min-ho looked at the thermometer floating in the tank. It was 22. How did you know that? Because I can smell it, she said. And because you are in a hurry, and people in a hurry never wait for the water bath. He swore quietly and started again. She let him. That was the whole of her teaching method, which is why it had taken 14 months to get him this far, and why he was actually getting there. At 9, an old man came down with a camera that had belonged to his father, and a roll that had been inside it since 1994. Adaeze developed it while he waited. Most of it was fogged. 4 frames came up. She laid the contact sheet on the light table and put the loupe to her eye. Your father took these on the same afternoon, she said. 2 before lunch, 2 after. The old man stared at her. How can you possibly know that? The light changes. She moved the loupe along the strip. These 2, the shadow is on the left of the doorway. These 2, it has crossed to the right. Same doorway. So the sun moved. So there is a gap, and the gap is a few hours. Min-ho leaned in over her shoulder and looked at exactly the same 4 frames. I do not see it, he said. You will. She cut the strip, sleeved it, and charged the old man 8,001, which was less than the chemicals cost. That is the shop. That is what happens there. The man with the 4 rolls came at 2:20. Adaeze noticed 3 things about him, in the order she noticed them. and none of them meant anything until much later. He came down the 11 steps, too fast, the way people do when they have decided something on the pavement above and are afraid of changing their mind. He did not look at the shop. Everybody looks at the shop. There are cameras on the wall from the 1960s and a print of the Chungmuro Street in 1978, and people always look. And he paid in cash, in advance, which is common, but he paid without being told the price. 4 rolls, he said. Color. When? Friday. Friday. He wrote a number in the ledger. His handwriting was very careful, which she also noticed. People who write carefully in a stranger's ledger are usually people who want to seem like the sort of person who writes carefully. Then he went back up the stairs, and Adaeze put the rolls in the tray with the rest of the week. She developed them on the Thursday. They were a wedding. That is not unusual. There is a small population of people who still shoot film at weddings, and about half of them do it because they saw it on the internet, and the other half do it because they are actually good. This one was actually good. Whoever held the camera knew what they were doing. The frames were composed, the exposures were even, and the photographer had stayed with the same lens all evening, which is a discipline. Adaeze printed the contact sheets and hung them to dry and made tea. And then she sat down at the light table with the loupe and went over them the way she goes over everything. Rolls 1 and 2 were the ceremony and the meal. Roll 3 was the speeches, and on roll 3, frame 11, in the background, out of focus, at the far end of the room, there was a man standing in an open doorway. Adaeze looked at him for perhaps 4 seconds. Then she wrote in her ledger, in the column, where she writes things to ask customers about. Roll 3, frame 11, man in doorway at rear. Ask about cropping. That was all. That is a completely ordinary note. She writes 6 of them a week. Friday came, and the man did not. That happens more than people would think. Film gets abandoned. It is expensive to develop and cheap to forget, and there is a shelf at the back of the shop with 200 sleeved rolls that nobody has ever returned for, some of them 15 years old. On the following Tuesday, Adaeze rang the number in the ledger. A recorded voice told her, in the flat way of recorded voices, that the number had not been assigned to any subscriber. She put the phone down and stood in the shop for a moment. Wrong number? Minho said. Not a wrong number. A number that has never existed. So he wrote it down wrong. He wrote it down very carefully, Adaeze said. She went back to the light table. She put the loupe to her eye and found roll 3, frame 11, and looked at the man in the doorway again, properly this time, the way she had not bothered to before. He was out of focus. He was 15 meters behind the subject, and the lens had not been given to him. But he was not walking past. He was not looking at the wedding. He was looking straight into the camera. The buyer came on the Thursday. He was polite and forgettable, and he wanted, he said, to purchase the shop's entire output for the first week of March. Every negative, every contact sheet, every print. All of it, all of it. I represent a client who is doing a project about the city. A project. Photographs of Seoul that were not taken by professionals. Found images. It is quite fashionable. Adaeze put down the cloth she was holding. How much? He said a number. It was, by her arithmetic, about 30 times what a week of that shop was worth, and roughly what she would earn in 3 years, if nothing broke. Minho, at the sink behind her, went completely still. No, Adaeze said. The man smiled as though he had not heard properly. I do not think you understand the figure. I understand the figure very well. I have been doing sums in this shop since before you could walk. She folded the cloth. That film is not mine. People bring me their negatives. I develop them, and I sleeve them, and I hold them until they come back for them. And some of them come back after 10 years, and when they do, the negatives are here. She looked at him. That is the entire business. That is the only thing I sell. If I sell you somebody else's photographs, I do not have a shop. I have a room with chemicals in it." The man's face did not change at all, which she noticed. "Think about it," he said. "I have." He went up the 11 steps. Minho waited until the bell above the door stopped moving. That was 3 years of money. It was. Adaeze, do you know why people bring film to me and not to the place in the mall? She went back to the light table. Because the place in the mall lost a roll in 2019, and a woman had to be told that the last pictures of her mother were gone. Everybody in Chungmuro knows that story. That is what my shop is. It is a story people tell each other about a woman who does not lose things. She picked up the loupe. 3 years of money is not worth that. It is not even near it. They came in on the Saturday night. Adaeze knew before she reached the bottom of the stairs, because the red bulb was on, and she had switched it off. Nothing was broken. That was the first strange thing. The lock had been opened rather than forced. The enlargers were untouched. There were 2 Leicas in the case by the door, worth more than everything else in the room put together, and both of them were exactly where they had been. The petty cash tin was open. The money was still in it. Minho arrived at 7:30 and stood in the doorway with his mouth open. What did they take? Adaeze was already at the counter. The ledger was gone, 40 years of it. Names, dates, telephone numbers, roll counts, and in the last column, in her handwriting, 6 notes a week about frames that customers might want to crop. "That is all," she said. They took the ledger. Minho did not understand for a moment. Then he did, and she watched him get there, and she watched the color go out of his face. They wanted to know who left the film. Yes, and who developed it. "That was already going to be me," Adaeze said. She was quiet for a while. Then she went to the back of the shop, moved a shelf of chemical bottles, and took out a flat gray box. Inside were contact sheets. Every one she had printed that month, a second copy, dated, in order. "You keep 2?" Minho said. "I have been in this trade 30 years. She set the box on the light table. "The first thing you learn is that one copy is not a copy." She spent Sunday deciding to go to the police. It was not a difficult decision. Someone had broken into her shop. Someone had offered her a criminal amount of money for a stranger's holiday photographs, and a man had left 4 rolls of film with a number that had never existed. She would take the contact sheet. She would take the contact sheets. She would explain it in order, slowly, the way she explains things. Somebody sensible would take it from there. On Monday morning, before she left, she did the thing she does with everything, which was to look at it one more time. She put the loupe to her eye and found roll 3, frame 11. The man in the doorway, out of focus 15 meters back, looking straight into the lens. And because she was looking properly this time, with the intention of describing him to somebody, she looked below his face, at his shoulder, at the line of his collar, at the shape of the thing on his chest. Adaeze Nwosu sat down on the stool in the middle of her own shop and did not move for a long time. The man in the doorway was wearing a uniform. If you are still down here with me, tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Now let me tell you who came down the stairs on Tuesday. He came at 4 in the afternoon, and he came down the 11 steps, slowly, which almost nobody does. Adaeze knew who he was before he reached the bottom, not his name. She did not follow that kind of news, but there is a way that certain men occupy a staircase, and there were 2 more of them at the top, and the light from the street had stopped coming down. You are Mrs. Nwosu. I am. My name is Ryu Sang-hyun. He stopped at the bottom step and did not come further, which she also noticed. Somebody came into your shop on Saturday night. Somebody did. They were not mine. I did not think they were, Adaeze said. The people who came in on Saturday wanted a ledger. You are standing on my stairs at 4 in the afternoon with the door open behind you. Those are 2 different kinds of person. Something moved behind his eyes. "You have 4 rolls of film," he said. "I have about 11,000 rolls of film. You will have to be more specific." He told her what she had, which took him about 4 minutes, and she listened without interrupting once. There had been a wedding on the 6th of March. It had been a real wedding, with a real couple, and 140 guests. And one of the guests had been shooting it on a film camera as a favor. Sent. At some point during the speeches in a service corridor at the back of the room, something had happened that had cost Ryu Song-hyun 2 men, and a great deal else. Every account of that night agreed on one thing. The corridor had been empty, except for the 2 men and the person who did it. And there was no one else in the building who could say otherwise. And the photographer left the country on the 9th. He was frightened, and he was right to be. Ryu's voice did not change. He dropped 4 rolls at the nearest shop that still developed film. And he wrote down a number that did not exist, because he did not want anyone to be able to find him through you. That was decent of him. It was not enough. "You want the negatives," Adaeze said. "Yes, and if I say no, you will have them anyway, by Thursday." Probably. She appreciated that. She had not expected to appreciate anything about him. "Then ask me properly." Ryu Song-hyun looked at her for a moment. "Mrs. Nwosu," he said, "I would like to buy nothing. I would like you to keep your negatives in your shop, where they are. And I would like your permission to put 2 men at the top of your stairs until this is finished. And if I say no to that as well, then I will put them 1 street away, where you cannot see them, and you will never know they are there." He paused. "I would rather tell you." Adaeze folded her arms. "You may put men at the top of my stairs," she said. "You may not decide what happens at the bottom of them. This is a working shop. People come here with their father's cameras. If a single one of them is turned away, or looked at wrong, or made to feel that they should not have come down, we are finished. Are we clear? We are clear." Then yes, he was almost at the top of the stairs when she said it. "Mr. Ryu, there is a thing you have not asked me." He stopped. "You have not asked me what is in frame 11. I assumed you would tell me when you had decided to." "I have decided." Adaeze pulled the light table lamp on. "The man in the doorway is wearing a uniform. It is not a hotel uniform. It has a shoulder flash and a number." Ryu came back down 2 steps. "Say that again." "There was a policeman standing in that doorway," she said, "looking directly at the camera, at the exact moment your 2 men were dying 40 feet away. And he has not appeared in a single account of that night, has he?" The shop was very quiet. "No," Ryu Song-hyun said. "He has not." She spent 4 days on it, and it was the most ordinary work she had ever done. She did not investigate anything. She is not an investigator. What she did was what she does, which is to lay 4 rolls of film on a light table and go through them 1 frame at a time, in order, and write down what she saw. Film has a property that people have forgotten about. It is a strip. The frames come off it in the order they were taken, and they cannot be shuffled, because the emulsion runs continuously and the edge markings run continuously with it. Frame 10 was taken before frame 11. There is no version of the world in which that is not true. That turned out to be the whole case. She laid it out in a room she had not expected to be in, with 9 people around a table. She did it in the flat, unhurried voice of a woman, explaining a trade to somebody who has never seen it. "Frame 9 and frame 10 are the same table," she said. "Same angle, same lens, a few seconds apart. You can tell because the man on the left has raised his glass in one and not the other. The photographer is standing still and working." She moved the pointer. "Frame 11 is not the same table. It has swung about 30 degrees to the left, and it is slightly underexposed because it was taken quickly. Somebody who is composing does not swing 30 degrees. Somebody who is startled does. By what? By the door opening behind him. She moved the pointer again, which is why the door is in the frame, and why the man in it is looking into the lens. He heard the shutter, and frame 12, back to the table, door shut. She let that sit. Frames 9, 10, 11, and 12 run on one continuous strip of film, Adaeze said. The edge of that strip carries the frame numbers and the emulsion batch code, printed by the manufacturer. It cannot be reordered. It cannot be inserted into. If you want to know whether that man was in that doorway between two events, the film has already answered you. It answered you on the 6th of March. It has been in a sleeve in my basement ever since. Somebody at the end of the table asked how she could be sure the strip had not been cut and rejoined. Adaeze put a print of the film edge on the screen. Because I would be able to see it, she said. That is my job. Nobody laid a hand on Hajin Siok. The negatives went where they needed to go, with the contact sheets and the second set from the gray box, and a 2-page note in her handwriting explaining the exposure order in language a person could follow. It took 11 weeks, and it was extremely boring. At the end of it, a man who had spent 19 years being trusted was not trusted by anybody, and the record of that night said something different from what it had said before. Adaeze did not attend any of it. She had a shop to open at 7. Min-ho got the thing she had been trying to work out how to give him for 14 months. His name went on the sign. It took a signwriter 2 days. He matched the 1970s lettering because Adaeze stood over him and made him do it twice. When it was finished, it said the shop name, and underneath, in smaller letters and son, which was not accurate, and which neither of them ever discussed. Min-ho looked at it from the pavement for a long time. That is not correct, he said. It is not. People will think. Let them, Adaeze said. It is the only inaccurate thing in that shop. Ryu Sang-hyun came down the stairs on a Thursday in June with an envelope. He put it on the counter and did not push it toward her. Papers, he said. Clean. A shop in Busan, freehold, twice this floor space, and it has natural light. Enough money that you do not open at 7 in the morning ever again. He paused. Nobody left alive knows your face. You are not owed anything, and you do not owe me anything. You can go. Adaeze looked at the envelope. Then she looked around the shop, the 11 steps, the red bulb, the 200 sleeved rolls at the back that nobody had ever come for, the wall of cameras from the 1960s, the sign outside with a lie on it. Do you know what I have been told for 11 years? She said. Tell me. That this trade is finished. She picked up the loupe from the light table and turned it over in her fingers. Every single one of those 11 years, somebody still came down those stairs with something in their hand that they could not see. She set the loupe down. One of them was you. Ryu Sang-hyun did not say anything. Keep your envelope, Adaeze said. I have a batch in the tank. Before you go, here is what I want to know. What have you kept doing long after everybody told you it was finished? Tell me down below. He did not take the envelope with him. He left it on the counter, and she left it there, too. And it sat next to the till for 4 months, gathering the fine gray dust that gets into everything in a room with chemicals in it. On a Tuesday in October, a young woman came down the 11 steps with a roll she had found in her grandmother's kitchen drawer. Adaeze took it and wrote it in the new ledger and told her Friday. Then she went to the back and put her hands in the tank and got on with it.